After studying this module, you would be able to understand the meaning of sanskars, know about the history and source of sanskars, learn the concept of karma and sanskars, understand the qualities of a good human being, identify the prenatal sanskars. The sanskar, as you've heard of, the sanskar are a series of sacraments, sacrifices and rituals that serve as a rite of passage and mark the various stages of human life to signify entry to a particular ashram, which means a stage of life. All human beings are required to perform a number of sacrifices with oblations for gods, ancestors and guardians in accordance with the Vedic dictums for a dharmic or a righteous life, and become dvija or twice born by the performance of these acts. Basically, all these rituals are of nature of purification and or they bestow good qualities or gunas to the human being. A person does not have to foster a relationship between religious spiritual knowledge and the practice of religious rituals. It means that a person having a deep religious spiritual knowledge may or may not be involved in the ritual processes. Similarly, a person involved in the rituals may or may not have religious knowledge. Most of the Vedic rituals consist of homa. Homa means a fire of sacrifices, which are of elaborate and intrinsic designs and complex methodology, accompanied by the recitation of Vedas, of mantras given in the Vedas by qualified priests in honor of a particular demigod or god. Fire offerings of various ingredients, gifts given in charity, presence of elders for blessings amidst sanctified sacrificial grounds, sacred herbs and good omens. Each important milestone of a human life is to be celebrated by undertaking a particular sanskar, wherein the significance of that milestone is ritually conveyed. Sanskars cover the entire life of a Hindu, that is, from the moment he is conceived in the mother's womb till death, inclusive of his funeral ceremonies, and thereafter for the smooth passage of his soul to another world. Just as gold and diamonds that are dug out from the ore need refining and polishing in order to shine in all their splendor, man too needs these sanskars for purification to shine in his best form physically, psychically and spiritually. There are several objectives of these sanskars, as can be seen from the mantras and symbolism used in the ceremonies. These can be broadly divided into two categories. One, that is to invoke beneficence from the kindly gods, and second, to keep away from the hostile or the evil powers that beset human life at various stages. Sanskar aim in the first instance at material gain to the individual. During some ceremonies, prayers are offered to gods for health, wealth, children, intellect, etc., which contribute to domestic and social felicity. Sanskars mirror self-expression of joys and sorrows, hopes and ambitions, which man exhibit in a dignified way when he celebrates these functions with feasts, presents, decorations, music, and also in funeral ceremonies in an appropriate mood. Sanskars also create an awareness of the attainment of social status and privileges for the individual. The boy who is given the sacred thread acquires the right to study the Vedas, or for example, the married man gains the title to perform the dharmas mentioned in the Vedas. Sanskars also bring about cultural gains, that is, the ancient lawgivers underscored the introduction of higher religion and sanctity in the lives of those who undergo sanskars. some impurity is inherently attached to the prenatal stage of birth, and Manu and Yagnavalya see in the sanskar ceremonies the removal of these impurities so that man's body is made fit to become a temple for the gods to reside. The purpose of these sanskars. One of the purposes of the sanskar is cultural. That is, the variety of rites and rituals related to the sanskars help in the formation and development of personality. In the Parashar Smriti, it is said, just as a picture is painted with various colors, so the character of a person is formed by undergoing various sanskars. Thus, the Hindu sages realized the need of consciously guiding and molding the character of individuals instead of letting them grow in a haphazard manner. The second purpose is spiritual. According to the seers, sanskars impart a higher sanctity to life. Impurities associated with material body are eradicated by performing these sanskars. The whole body is consecrated and made a fit place for dwelling of the Atma. According to the Atri Smriti, a man is born Shudra. By performing the Upanayana sanskar, he becomes a Dvija, that is, he is twice born. By acquiring the Vedic lore, he becomes a Vipra, an inspired poet. And by realizing Brahman, that is God, he becomes a Brahmin. The sanskars are a form of spiritual endeavor, sadhana, an external disciple for an internal spiritual edification. Thus, the entire life of Hindu is one grand sacrament. The Isha Upanishad reveals that the final goal of sanskars by observing the rites and rituals is to transcend the bondage of the sanskars and cross the ocean of death. To this we can add that after transcending the cycle of births and deaths, the Atma attains Paramatma, that is, the Lord Purushottam. In short, we can say the whole gamut of sanskars is designed to channel the entire energies of man towards the creation of a perfect secular as well as spiritual life in himself, in a manner that is not only ingenious but essentially practical, dignified and compulsory in the interest of all-round human welfare.
History and sources. The earliest mention of sanskars are found in the Rig Veda. Hymns, now used in the rituals of marriage, conception, and funeral, are to be found there, besides others that are generally recited during all rituals. In the Yajur Veda, we have the references to the tonsure ceremony. This is common to the Shrota or Yagya ceremonies. The Atharva Veda is a rich source of mantras relating to several of the sanskars like marriage, funeral, initiation for Vedic studies, etc. Coming down to the Brahmana period, Gopata Brahmana contains references to Upanayana or the thread ceremony. The word brahmacharya is to be found in the Satapatha Brahmana. The Taittiriya Aranyaka contains mantras for cremation. Chandogya Upanishad relates how a brahmacharin is admitted to the Gurukul, that is, the boarding school. Mention of Gayatri Mantra is made in the Bhadranayaka and other Upanishads. Taittiriya Upanishad contains the famous Convocation Address. This Upanishad also contains mantras used for begetting a learned son and also relating to funeral ceremonies. It is reasonable to conclude that sanskars were developed, amplified, codified, and given an institutional basis in later years, with the development of civilization catering to the needs of the time for giving stability to the community. Karmas and gunas. Karma means work. A man has to be made a knower of the Atman through a series of rituals. Karma has to be performed in such a way as to purify him both outwardly and inwardly. Such a karma is called sanskar. That which removes the impurities from an object, takes away all the bad or evil elements, and imparts good qualities to it is sanskar. For instance, Kesha Sanskar means shaving or delousing and applying oil to the hair. The sages have laid down the 40 samskars and the 8 Atmagunas for this purpose. The term Atmaguna speaks about the Atman being rendered pure. There is a suggestion that we are dualists who hold that the individual self is different from the Paramatman. In truth, there is only one Atman, one self, and there is no difference between the Jivatman or individual self and the Parbrahman. The self is ever pure, so it is wrong to believe that it has to be purified by the sanskars. It is nirgun, unconditioned, and without attributes. So it is also wrong to speak of what are called as Atmagunas, since Atman has truly no gunas or qualities or attributes. However, in practice, owing to Maya, we do not realize that we are the Atman without qualities. It is the self perceived in our dualistic life that is referred to when we speak of sanskars, and it is full of impurities that have to be removed through the sanskars. It has also durguns or bad qualities which have to be removed by cultivating the 8 good qualities. Once we succeed in this, there will be neither any sanskar nor any guna. We will transcend all gunas, all qualities, including the highest of them, sattvagun. Finally, there will be only the self without any karma, without any guna, and without any distinction between the Jivatman and the Paramatman. But to come to this state, we have to go through the process of sanskars and cultivate the 8 Atmagunas. One has to be disciplined through works and observe the rules about our daily routine, about how we should sit and stand and eat and dress. In this way, we will rein in our minds, subdue our passions and ego, and our feelings of anger, hatred, fear, and sorrow will gradually wither away. The sanskars and the atmagunas are interconnected. They will help us to acquire the qualities of the noble Puranic characters whose stories we listen to or read. Gunas or qualities. The 8 gunas or qualities are Daya, Shanti, Anasuya, Swach, Anyasa, Mangal, Akraparnya, and Aspraha. Daya implies love for all creatures, such love being the very fulfillment of life. There is indeed no greater happiness than that derived by loving others. Daya is the backbone of all qualities. Shanti is patience. One kind of Shanti is patiently suffering disease, poverty, misfortune, and so on. The second is forgiveness, and it implies loving a person even if he causes us pain and trouble. Anasuya is the name of the sage Atri's wife. She was utterly free from jealousy. That is how she got the name, which means non jealousy. Heartburning caused by another man's prosperity or status is jealousy. We ought to have love and compassion for all, and ought to be patient and forgiving even towards those who do us wrong. We must not envy people with their higher status, even if they be less deserving of it than we are, and at the same time must be mature enough to regard their better position as a reward they earned by doing good in their previous life. Soch is derived from suchi, means cleanliness. Purity is to be maintained in all matters such as bathing, dress, food. There is a saying often quoted even by the unlettered: cleanliness makes you happy and it even appeases your hunger. To see a clean person is to feel ourselves clean. In Manu's listings of dharmas that are applicable to all, ahimsa or non-violence comes first, followed by satya, truthfulness, asatya, non-covetousness, non-stealing is the direct meaning, soch, that is cleanliness, and indriya nigraha, that is subduing the senses or even obliterating them. The fifth Atmaguna is anayasa. It is the opposite of ayasa, which denotes effort, exertion, etc. Anayasa means to have a feeling of lightness, to take things easy. One must not keep a long face, wear a scowl, or keep lamenting one's hardships. Anayasa is a great virtue. Obstacles, inevitable to any work or enterprise, must not cause you any mental strain. The sixth guna is Mangala. Mangala implies an auspicious air about happiness that is characterized by divinity and purity. One must be cheerful all the time and not keep growling at people on the slightest pretext. This itself is extremely helpful to radiate happiness wherever we go and exude auspiciousness. It is better than making lavish gifts and throwing money about. To do a job with a feeling of lightness is anayasa. To be light ourselves, creating joy wherever we go, is mangala. We must be like a lamp, spreading light, and should never give a cause for people to say, "Oh, he has come to find fault with everything." Wherever we go, we must create a sense of happiness. We must live auspiciously and make sure that there is happiness brimming over everywhere. Akrapanya is the next guna. Miserliness is the quality of Kripana or miser. Akrapanya is the opposite of miserliness. We must give generously and wholeheartedly. At Kurukshetra, Arjuna felt dejected and refused to wage war with his own kin. In doing so, according to Gita, he was guilty of Karpanya dosha. It means contextually that he abased himself to a woeful state. He became miserly about himself. Akrapanya is the quality of a courageous and zestful person who can face problems with determination. Aspraha is the last of the eight qualities. Spraha means desire, a grasping nature. Aspraha is the opposite, being without desire. Desire is at the root of all trouble, all evil, and all through the ages It has been the cause of misfortunes, but to eradicate it from the mind of men seems an almost impossible task. By performing rites again and again, and by constantly endeavoring to acquire the Atmic qualities, one will eventually become desireless. The Buddha calls desire thirst. Intense desire for an object is Trishna. His chief teaching is the conquest of desire. Desirelessness is the last of the eight qualities. The first one, Daya, is the life breath of Christianity. Each religion lays emphasis on a particular quality, though all qualities are included in the teachings of Buddha, Jesus Christ, the Prophet Muhammad, Guru Nanak, Zoroaster, Confucius, and the founder of all other religions. The 16 Samskars. Most Brahmins communities used to follow complex rituals in connection with major events in their lives, such as pregnancy, childbirth, education, marriage, and death. Although the number of major sanskars fluctuates between 12 and 18 in the Graha Sutras, later it became 16 in number, generally known as Shodasha Sanskars. Prenatal sanskars. The first one is Garbhadhana. Garbhadhana is the act of conception. This is the first sacrament which follows immediately on every matrimonial union. There are a number of rites performed before conception. The act of first sexual intercourse or insemination is known as Nishkam. There are certain do's and don'ts during the Ritu period of a woman which are of great psychological significance. The propitious day and time are fixed astrologically for Garbhadhana and the ritual follows a set pattern. The mantras uttered in this sanskar are essentially prayers offered to God to help the bride conceive a good son. The mantras make use of occasional metaphors of joint action. These mantras can be freely translated as may we produce strong and long lived sons as fire is produced by friction. May he be well behaved. I am part of God and I shall produce good sons to liberate my ancestors. May we beget shining, wealthy children. May we donate liberally to the needy and attain moksha. May God make you fit for conception. Let the evil spirit flee from you. Let your child be free from defects like lameness, deafness, etc. Be you like the divine Kamdhenu, etc. Procreation is a compulsory duty enjoined on the Hindu to repay his ancestral debt, except when either or both the partners are functionally unfit. The different Grihasutras differ in their point of view whether the Garbhadhana is to be performed only once during the first conception or every time the woman conceives. In the first case, it is considered as Kshetra Sanskar and in the second case as Garbha Sanskar. Pumsavana. Pumsavana literally means engendering a male tissue. It is a ritual conducted in the third month of pregnancy. If it is the first pregnancy, it can be in the fourth month also. The pregnant woman consumes one bead of barley and two beads of black grain, along with a little curd. This is accompanied by religious chanting. The time prescribed for Pumavasana differs in different Grihasutras and can be extended up to the eighth month of pregnancy according to some. Some Grihasutras also give a later date for pregnancies after the first. This ceremony is performed in the second, third, and the fourth month of pregnancy. The meaning and the object of this ceremony is to quicken a male child in the woman. The Punsavna is performed on a day of male nakshatra. During this ritual, a few drops of juice of the banyan stem are put into the nostril of the pregnant lady to inhale it, with a prayer for the birth of a son or a worthy child. According to Sushrut, the great Ayurvedic writer, the juice of the banyan tree has all the properties of relieving trouble during pregnancy. Sanctified thread is tied to the left wrist of the lady by way of protection. The mantras freely rendered pray, may God Ishana fulfill our wishes. Dhata bless the world with children and wealth. May he bless this household too with children. May the immortals live in this house. May Agni bless me with sons. May Indra bless me with children. May I have handsome children. After this, the pregnant lady should live in a disciplined way and lead a life with proper diet and confined movements. She should eat a small quantity of the Coccolus cordicalis, Brahmi herb, and dry ginger with milk. She should avoid too much sleep, avoid too much talking, avoid saltish food preparations, avoid sour, pungent, bitter things, and avoid purgatives. She should avoid anger, aversion, greed, etc., and should always keep her mind joyful and happy. She should lead a life of good conduct. Simanto Nayana literally means parting the hair. It is a sacrament that is performed in the fourth or the fifth month of a woman's pregnancy. Simanto Nayana is conducted for the protection of the mother at the critical period of gestation. This sanskar is performed to both invoke protection of the mother and the unborn child from demons and spirits that might want to cause harm to the mother and child, as well as to ensure good health, success, and prosperity for the unborn child. Fragrant oil is poured on the head of the pregnant woman. A line of parting is drawn 3 times through her hair from the forehead upwards with 3 stalks of kusha grass bound together. The Pranava mantram Om and the sacred words called Vrahitris Bhur Bhava Swaha are chanted during each operation. If the child is stillborn, this has to be repeated during the next pregnancy. The third in the series of prenatal sanskars, this is performed during the period between the fifth and the eighth months of pregnancy. The specific materials used during this sanskar are the quill of a porcupine, an ear of a ripe paddy, and some udumbara leaves. The deity invoked is Rika, the presiding deity of the full moon. Their implications are that the pregnancy should be fruitful, the child should be endowed with sharp and penetrating intellect like the sharp quill of the porcupine, the child should be beautiful like the full moon. The gist of the mantra is I beseech the goddess Raka, may she make this ceremony blameless. May my son be endowed with sharp intellect. Music, especially on the veena, is indicated to be played on this occasion. This increases the mother's suckling power, besides conferring other psychological benefits. Ladies are asked to sing, Be a mother of heroic sons, thus creating a heroic atmosphere. The mother fasts and keeps silent after the ceremony till night time, when stars become visible. At the close of the ceremony, she touches a male calf symbolizing a son. I, the husband, call my wife, who is as beautiful as the moon in the night and is possessed of good words of praise for me. I call her to participate in all the functions of the prayers. Let her, the lady of good fortunes, listen to my words and understand them with her spirit. May she perform the functions of progeny in such a good way as she sews the clothes, etc., with the needle that does not pierce the fingers when sewing. May she give me a brave son. Whatever is uttered herein is true. The oblation offered is meant for Raka, and it is not me. The wife recites mantras which mean, my husband, who is potentially vigorous, has established the embryo of life in me, who is desirous of a son or vigorous child. May husband be free from all evils and accompany me with a noble son.
Well, students, let's now come to the summary of this chapter. The sanskar are a series of sacraments, sacrifices and rituals that serve as a rite of passage and mark the various stages of human life, and it signifies the entry to a particular ashram, that is stage of life. All human beings are required to perform a number of sacrifices with oblations for gods, ancestors and guardians in accordance with the Vedic dictums for a dharmic or a righteous life, and become dvija, that is twice born, by performance of these actions. Sanskars cover the entire life of a Hindu from the moment he is conceived in the mother's womb to death, that is inclusive of his funeral ceremonies, thereafter for the smooth passage of his soul to another world. The earliest mention of sanskars are found in the Rig Veda. Hymns now used in the rituals of marriage, conception and funeral are to be found there, besides others that are generally recited during all rituals. Karma means work. A man has to be made a knower of the Atman through a series of rituals. Karma has to be performed in such a way to purify him both outwardly and inwardly. Such a karma is called as sanskar. The sages have laid down 40 sanskars and 8 atmagunas for this purpose. The term atmaguna speaks about the Atman being rendered pure. There is a suggestion that we are dualists, that is, we hold an individual self which is different from the Paramatman. They lay down 8 gunas or qualities such as Daya, Shanti, Anusuya, Soch, Anashaya, Anayasa, Mangala, Akrapanya and Aspraha. The number of these major sanskars fluctuate between 12 and 18 in the Griha Sutras. Later, it became 16 in number, generally known as the Shodasha Samskar. The first prenatal sanskar is Garbhadhana, that is literally gifting the womb, which is the act of conception. The first sacrament which followed immediately after the matrimonial union. There are a number of rites which are performed before conception. The second prenatal sanskar is Pumvasana, Pumsavana, literally engendering a male tissue. It is a ritual which is conducted in the 3rd month of pregnancy. The pregnant woman consumes 2 beads of black grain and consumes 1 bead of barley and 2 beads of black grain along with a little curd. This is accompanied by religious chanting. The third prenatal sanskar is Simanto Nayana, which is literally parting of the hair. It is a sacrament which is performed in the 4th or the 5th month of a woman's pregnancy. It is conducted for the protection of both the mother and the child during this period of gestation. This invokes both protection of the mother and the unborn child from the demons and spirits that might want to cause harm to the mother and the child, as well as to ensure the health, success and prosperity for the unborn child. The rest of the sanskars will be discussed in the next module.